today? All right, we have came as Vatsonga Machangani from Limpopo, from Guyana, and we are saying that we are being affected by the current happenings of the marches that are happening, because our people from Limpopo and from Mpumalanga are being mistaken for foreigners. So along executing a genuine crime, it is affecting our people, along our people.
Imagine being South African, born in South Africa, living in South Africa, and still being told you do not belong. Not because you crossed a border, not because you do not have citizenship, but because of your language, your accent, your skin tone, your culture, or because someone on the street has decided that you do not look South African enough. That is the warning now coming from a South African community caught inside the June 30th panic. They say they are being mistaken for foreigners in their own country. And that changes the whole conversation, because the danger of xenophobia is not only that it targets foreign nationals. The deeper danger is that once the street begins to decide who belongs, even citizens can become suspects. Welcome back to the South Africa File. This is where we follow the history, the power, the politics, and the consequences. For weeks, South Africa has been moving toward June 30th, a date promoted by anti-immigrant groups as a deadline for undocumented foreigners to leave the country. But the government has not issued an official deportation deadline for June 30th. The state has said June 30th will be a normal working day. It has also warned that no unauthorised person has the right to demand documents or proof of nationality from anyone in the street. That warning matters because of what is happening on the ground. A South African community from Limpopo and Mpumalanga says its people are being caught in the panic. They say they are being mistaken for foreigners. They say their language is being used against them. They say songs and slogans in the anti-immigrant atmosphere have made them feel excluded in their own country. And in a recent interview, one of their conveners made a point that South Africa needs to hear carefully. He did not say illegal immigration is not a problem. He did not say South Africans have no right to demand stronger border management. He did not dismiss the pain of communities who feel abandoned by the state. In fact, he said the concern about undocumented migration is genuine. But he made the most important distinction in this whole debate. A genuine cry can become wrong when it is executed wrongly. That sentence is the heart of this story. Because there is a difference between demanding that government fix immigration and ordinary people turning themselves into immigration officers. There is a difference between marching to home affairs and stopping people in the street. There is a difference between putting pressure on the state and threatening a Malawian, a Mozambican, a Nigerian, a Zimbabwean, or another African person because you think they do not belong. And now this community is warning that the same street logic is also catching South African citizens. Take a listen.
We feel excluded because of those songs, and we want to demand the government to take an action against such songs, because Vatsonga Machangani people are South Africans and this is their home. We want to submit to everyone that as for Vatsonga Machangani from Limpopo and from Mpumalanga, if they are in KZN, they are in Eastern Cape, they are in Western Cape, they don't need a passport to be there. This is their home and this is our country. We belong here. We belong.
That line should stop everyone for a moment. They do not need a passport to be there, because they are South African. A person from Limpopo does not need a passport to be in the Western Cape. A person from Mpumalanga does not need a passport to be in Gauteng. A South African citizen does not stop being South African because another South African does not recognize their language. This is why the issue is bigger than one community. It exposes the dangerous logic behind street-level immigration enforcement. Because mobs do not verify nationality properly, they guess, they judge language, they judge accent, they judge skin tone, they judge clothing, they judge surnames. They judge whether someone sounds familiar or foreign, and that is how citizenship becomes a street test. This is exactly why immigration law cannot be handed to crowds. A trained immigration official must work through documents, procedures, records, and legal authority. A mob works through suspicion, and suspicion is dangerous because it spreads. Today, it may target foreign nationals. Tomorrow, it may target South Africans who speak the wrong language in the wrong place. That is how xenophobia turns inward. It does not remain neatly aimed at people without documents. It begins to ask a more dangerous question. Who looks foreign? Who sounds foreign? Who belongs here? And who gets to decide? That is the blind spot inside many anti-immigrant campaigns. The public language may be about legality, documentation, and border control. But the street reality can become something very different. It can become tribalism. It can become profiling. It can become humiliation. It can become citizens being forced to prove that they belong in their own country. Now, let's be fair. South Africa has a real immigration management crisis. There are problems at Home Affairs. There are gaps in documentation. There are weaknesses at the border. There are employers who exploit undocumented workers. There are communities that feel government has lost control. And when ordinary people live with unemployment, crime, overcrowded services, and weak policing, anger grows. That anger is real. But anger still needs the right address. If Home Affairs is failing, confront Home Affairs. If employers are exploiting undocumented labour, confront employers. If police are failing, confront policing leadership. If municipalities are collapsing, confront local government. But do not turn poor migrants into the battlefield, and do not turn South African citizens into suspects, because they speak a language someone else does not understand. That is why this interview is so important. The speaker does not reject the concern, he rejects the method. TLA listen.
Am I endorsing illegality? Certainly not. I'm not endorsing illegality. I am saying even a genuine task, if it's executed wrong, it ends up becoming wrong. But if we are marching towards the government buildings and the pressure is directed towards the government, that I'm for that struggle. But the one of taking the law into my own hands, I'm not going to participate in that.
That is the balance this debate desperately needs. He is saying, yes, illegal immigration is a serious concern. But no, that concern does not give ordinary people the right to beat, threaten, stop, search, or humiliate others. That is the line between accountability and vigilantism. Accountability looks upward, toward the institutions with power. Vigilantism looks sideways, toward people who are easier to target. And that is the danger, before June 30th. The moment citizens start believing they have been deputized by anger, every person who looks unfamiliar becomes vulnerable. A shopkeeper becomes a suspect. A worker becomes a suspect. A commuter becomes a suspect. A student becomes a suspect. A South African from another province becomes a suspect. A person speaking a minority language becomes a suspect. And when that happens, the rule of law is no longer protecting people. The crowd is deciding who deserves protection. This is where the South African state's warning becomes important. Government has said that no unauthorised person may demand documentation or proof of nationality from anyone. That statement is not just legal language. It is a warning against a collapse in public authority. Because if ordinary people can demand identity documents in the street, then the state has lost control of one of its most basic powers. And if belonging can be decided by crowds, then citizenship itself becomes fragile. The convener made this point in a very simple way. Ordinary citizens are not trained to execute immigration enforcement. Take a listen.
If the government responds and say we are prepared to take an action, I believe then we have achieved what we have always wanted. If the government says we want to take an action, they are awakened now. And if they are prepared to take an action, we should give them a chance to take an action, because we are not trained to execute that task. That
line matters. We are not trained to execute that task. Because immigration enforcement is not a street hobby. It is not a community punishment exercise. It is not a social media challenge. It is not a protest trophy. It is a state function. And when the state fails, the answer is not for crowds to replace it. The answer is to force the state to work. That is the difference between democracy and mob rule. A democracy allows protest. It allows people to demand accountability. It allows people to march to government offices, submit memoranda, ask for stronger enforcement, and demand reform. It does not allow private citizens to become border police. It does not allow mobs to decide nationality. Not one language group to humiliate another. It does not allow one community to make another community feel like strangers at home. That is why the case of this South African community is such an important warning. They are not only saying, protect us, they are saying, look at what this politics is turning South Africa into. If a South African can be mistaken for a foreigner because of language, then the country has already crossed a dangerous line. If a citizen fears speaking their mother tongue in public, then the problem is no longer only immigration. If one tribe is made to feel smaller than another, then xenophobia has already turned inward, and once it turns inward, nobody can fully control where it stops. This is why we have to be careful with stories of violence in this climate. One case that has circulated widely is the killing of 19-year-old Alamulo Sambo in Mossel Bay. His family reportedly believed he was targeted because he spoke Xitsonga and was mistaken for a foreign national. That fear resonated deeply because many South Africans from minority communities already feel exposed in the current anti-immigrant climate. But police have said their preliminary investigation did not find evidence that his death was linked to xenophobia, tribalism, anti-immigration protests, or his identity as a Tsonga-speaking South African. So, let's be careful with the facts. We cannot claim as proven what the police have not confirmed. However, the fact that this case immediately became a symbol tells us something important. It tells us that the fear already exists, that people believe language and appearance can make them targets. It tells us that South Africans are watching the anti-immigrant panic and asking, what if they turn on us too? That is the deeper warning. Because xenophobia does not only damage the people directly attacked, it damages the meaning of citizenship. Xenophobia teaches society to look at people and ask, do you really belong here? And once that question enters the street, it becomes very difficult to contain. This is why the language issue matters so much. South Africa is not one language, one culture, one sound, or one face. It is a country of many peoples, histories, and identities. But when some languages are treated as more South African than others, the country begins to reproduce the same hierarchy it claims to reject. Some people become the default. Others become questioned. Some accents are accepted. Others become suspicious. Some identities are recognized immediately. Others are forced to explain themselves. That is how internal exclusion works. And that is why the convener's closing message is so important. He did not come to attack another South African group. He came to reject tribal superiority. Listen.
All of these people here, I have told all of them that I am not here to fight against Zulu people. I'm not here to fight against Xhosas. I'm not here to fight against Sutus. I am here to fight against tribalism. And there are other Zulu people here that are saying no to tribalism. And those are the people that we are saying they understand and they represent the mandate that we are representing here. And even if it's anyone from every other tribe, if they come here and they are saying no to tribalism, we stand with them. We don't have a problem with that. All we do not want is this superiority, from one tribe to another. We believe that we should all be brothers because in South Africa we are all equal. There is no tribe, there is no...
Therefore, this is the moral center of this episode. There is no tribe bigger than another tribe. There is no language that makes a person more South African than another South African. There is no accent that gives one citizen more belonging than another citizen. And there is no public anger, no matter how genuine, that gives ordinary people the right to turn suspicion into law. This is where South Africa must be honest with itself. Illegal immigration is a real governance issue. Weak documentation is a real issue. Border corruption is a real issue. Employers exploiting desperate people is a real issue. But tribal profiling will not fix any of those problems. Beating Africans will not fix home affairs. Threatening shopkeepers will not create jobs. Mocking a language will not repair public services. And making citizens prove their belonging to strangers will not make South Africa safer. It will make the country more divided. That is what June 30th has exposed. It has exposed fear among migrants. It has exposed weakness in the state. It has exposed political opportunism. It has exposed the power of misinformation. And now, it is exposing something even deeper. It is exposing how quickly a campaign about foreigners can begin to unsettle citizens themselves. That is why this story matters. Because the question is no longer only, are foreign nationals safe before June 30th? But here is the deeper question. Are South Africans safe from being treated like foreigners in their own country? If the answer is no, then the country is facing something far bigger than an immigration debate. It is facing a crisis of belonging, a crisis of law, a crisis of identity, and a crisis of who gets to decide who counts as South African. This is the South Africa file. History, power, politics, and consequences. If this kind of evidence-based analysis matters to you, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next investigation. Also share this episode with someone who cares about South Africa, identity, migration, tribalism, and the rule of law. But before you go, I want to ask you two questions. First, can South Africa fight illegal immigration without allowing ordinary people to profile others by language, accent, or appearance? And second, what happens to a country when citizens themselves begin to fear being mistaken for foreigners? Put your thoughts in the comments, and let's keep this conversation serious, honest, and grounded in evidence.